Hello and welcome back once again to the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. This is episode 212, John and Wendy Ask Us Anything Part 4.
What? No, again and again and again and again and again?
Sure, there you go. There it is. Wendy said it for me. As always, I'm your host, John.
And I'm Wendy. How are you, John?
Wendy, I'm doing well, and we're in March.
Good.
We're very excited to have Namely on board as the sponsor for this episode, so we appreciate them. Be sure to check out namely.com to learn more about their offerings for those of you in those employer space between 50 and 1,000 employees. They do some really, really great work, and you should check them out.
Yes, definitely check them out. They're awesome. Excited to work with them again.
Wendy, we hadn't done an Ask Us Anything for quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always amazed at we go from the ridiculous to the sublime when it comes to the questions that come in. So
and the
first off,
ridiculously
thank you.
Sublime. Let's just say that, too.
Yes. We will thank everyone at the end, but at the outset, thank you for participating and contributing. We're gonna have fun, Wendy. We always do, but we know we're gonna have fun.
There's gonna be a lot of laughter in this episode.
Yes. Some of it, yeah. Well, I was going to say some of it's self-inflicted, but yeah, that too. We always start with the, I guess, more business-related or serious, maybe not so serious, but pertaining to our work and the podcast and what have you. And then we move to that ridiculous and the sublime and ridiculously sublime. So, Wendy, before we start, I'll ask, because we don't have a guest, what's in your glass tonight?
You know, I have a nice rosé and some water. I'm double fisting tonight because I can. I can. How about you?
I have a bottle of orange and cream sparkling water beverage because I don't have Spindrift, so I have Clear American, which I think is the Walmart version of Spindrift.
I was going to say, it's a Walmart, Food Lion.
Yeah. It's kind of like a dreamsicle or creamsicle. It's quite good.
Oh, nice. I know, we don't record the video here, but for those at home, when John first lifted it up for a hot second, I thought it might be hand sanitizer and thought we were going to have a very different conversation, but it's not. Very happy it's not.
It's not. There's no introduction to be made.
There's not. So
we're here for the fun. So let's get started.
Let's get started. Yes. So our first question, John, is from Matt Henry. What lasting impact do you feel the pandemic has had on the world of HR?
Thank you, Matt. I think it is too early to tell. I would say we're still not even out of the pandemic.
Right.
It's very strange. You and I talked offline earlier this week. We have lifted mask mandates here for the most part in the state of Virginia. And it was very weird being in an office and seeing people's faces.
Right.
Just seeing eyes I've seen people's eyes, unless you're in a meeting or you're far away, but just walking around the office and people are smiling and, hey, how are you? And it was weird in a good way, but weird.
Yeah.
Almost just kind of like when Sarah Noel Wilson talked about reintroducing ourselves.
Right.
That's what it felt like. It was really strange. So I think it's hard to know what the lasting impact is. Mm-hmm. I think in the short term, we're going to continue to really struggle with the whole work from home or work remote idea. And how do we continue to encourage that where we can? We're going to have to continue to encourage it where we can, because I think that people have come to expect it in many cases in those jobs that allow it. It's also going to be interesting to see, while we don't anticipate seeing something of this level again, how will we respond next time?
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you remember when we did our emergency preparedness session with Paula, yes, and her friend, we talked about, I can remember planning for bird flu and several other things. It'll be interesting to see if we remember, because I don't know if it's going to happen in our careers again.
Right.
But if it does, do we remember how we handled it this time? I don't want to speculate. It'd be interesting. Maybe we hold this question from Matt even for next year or then several years down the road, to figure out what the impact is. I will say one positive, I think, or maybe a positive impact in it, is that I do think there's a lot more credibility that has been placed on HR in many organizations. Hopefully that sticks.
I would agree with that. I think you're right. I think it's too soon to say for sure. If we want to talk about something good, I think HR has been at the forefront during the last 2 years of pushing the envelope and how do we do things better and different. We're past the time of the way we've always done it. I know you and I have been there a while, but I think more and more people are getting there. And how do we do work differently? So I would agree but I'm going to agree that, we could ask this question every year here on forward, and we'll get a different answer.
Well, Chris Hadley asked, as a recruiter, what is one of the funniest or out of the ordinary questions you've ever been asked by a candidate?
This is a hard question. I've been digging through the recesses of my mind, and I don't know if I've just been incredibly lucky, but I can't think of anything that's really outlandish. I went back to a story way back when a friend of mine told about the most outlandish thing he had ever seen was when someone he was interviewing started breastfeeding their baby in the middle of the interview. And it was an in-person interview. So this was, probably 20 years ago, which maybe it's not that outlandish, but it would probably...
Did they ask at least?
No, they just brought the baby in and just did it, which, good for you if you're comfortable in doing that. But it is a bit out of place in the middle of an interview. And especially back in the day, I think it was for United Airlines, so very conservative company, to do that. So, sorry to be boring, Chris, but I really don't have any weird, outlandish, candidate questions.
I'm very in the same place. I always felt like most times candidates, at least when I was doing what I would call real recruiting, or really, on the phone all the time, I felt like most times people weren't very well prepared. Yeah. In other words, it was almost like they maybe had done a little bit of research. And I know there's this whole argument about, well, what does it really say if they haven't read up on you or if they should? And I know it's different now in the market that we're in, but I would think back then, 15, 20 years ago, you would at least understand enough to know what the company does and what kind of widgets they're making. I didn't have any really off the wall questions. I can't remember the first professional staffing company I worked for. There was a person that was applying for an accounting job that asked if having an embezzlement charge may negate them from getting work. That's probably up there. And by the way, yes, it does. It was much more challenging to place somebody that is supposed to be counting the money when apparently they counted the money and put it in their girlfriend's pocket, because they explained the whole story to me.
Oh, wow.
That, why they did what they did.
Interesting.
And they did it for love and, family business. And, it was interesting. It was interesting.
Wow. I can tell you the most interesting question I've probably ever asked in an interview. I was interviewing at a university. I want to say it was University of Oregon, because Rocky and I were considering that as one of the locations we would move to. I did ask if there were discounts to football. They'd discount season tickets to the football. They do not. And I don't think many universities do have discounted season tickets to their football teams. I know SDSU doesn't either. So that's probably the most outlandish question I've even asked. Everyone's favorite Canadian, Melanie Peacock, asks, what is the most surprising thing you have learned about our global HR community by doing the podcast? What has been the greatest impact on your own work based upon what you have learned through the podcast?
For me, the surprising thing was that our issues are basically the same. And that regardless of where we were, literally talking to somebody in Australia or India or fill in the blank, literally on the other side of the planet, the core people issues tend to be the same. And I think that was the biggest surprise for me. I can remember when we first started talking to people and just trying to understand what were the challenges, and holy cow, they're really not that different. So that was very impactful and very surprising. What has it done for me as far as my work? Well, I've been able to parlay the podcast into my work to create content in that way. That's been a tremendous thing. I've had a lot of fun doing it. Getting to know as many people as we've gotten to know it's been great when we are looking at tech or we are looking at different things. I can call different people and I can introduce them to my management team and have conversations about whatever that is. It's been just a fantastic thing. And I know it's funny. I can remember we had Ben Eubanks on a long time ago talking about AI. My VP wanted to talk to him and we got done with the call. And after Ben hung up, my boss said, "How did you know that guy?" I'm like, "He was my roommate at SHRM conference." And he's like, "Huh?" And I go, "Yeah, I'd never met him before.
Yeah.
We just ended up being roommates because it was Chicago and expensive." And he's like, "Huh?" He was blown away.
Right.
But anyhow, it's been a lot of fun to be able to get to know so many great people and then take that and apply it in our day jobs and have some level of success with it.
I would agree with all of that. And I was thinking back to, the first time we went to SHRM and as the podcast, I should clarify that. And we sat down and we interviewed Ravi and, and Mofada and Renee and Ben and Sel. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody. Anish. And, sitting there talking to him about, these are all the same. We're all going through the exact same thing, which is just fascinating and not, right? Because it's people. We deal with people. So, of course, we're dealing with a lot of the same things.
And how has it impacted you from a day job perspective?
Well, I've talked about the podcast, doing a podcast at work as well. But I think the biggest thing is just the connections, especially as I'm doing more of the strategy stuff and getting into asking questions and, hey, who's already done this? Where do we want to go? How do we want to, how has it worked for you? And being able to just reach out and call people and have those conversations, I think is priceless. And then, being able to make recommendations on vendors of who do we work with, bring them into our own conversations and expand the people that I work with to know the greater HR community, because I think that's what makes us all better. It's not just keeping it to ourselves, but it's sharing it with those that we work with and expanding that HR community.
Kate Bischoff's name is going to come up more than right now. Her serious question for us was, if you worked for an organization with a 25% pay gap between men and women or between black and white employees, would you resign?
In theory, that should be a very easy question. In reality, it's harder. I really want to say, yes, I would. I think it would be easier to do it now because there are more opportunities to find work where, maybe even 2 years ago, before remote work was really a possibility, saying, I don't want to work for this organization anymore because of this issue. I guess I could go to work for Walmart. I could go to work for McDonald's as, drive-through person, because there just weren't that many opportunities for someone with my skill set in a small town type of thing. But I know in the past, I ignored it, to be honest with that, because I did.
I would leave only after I had an opportunity to try to make some kind of change.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate in my roles over the years, particularly when I was in leadership. I had a very diverse group of people working for me. I knew what the pay ranges were. I made sure that people were paid all, according to, I didn't have any major gaps, and I was very cognizant of that. I feel like if it was one of those situations where I walked into an organization not knowing at all and not having any idea, and if I was afforded an opportunity to have those conversations, try to address those gaps, and everybody just kind of said, it is what it is, we're not dealing with it, there's probably bigger things at play than just that.
Right.
If you're when you're talking those and I'm sure I know it exists. You and I both know it exists. I would want to try to make some type of fundamental changes and move that needle before I just gave up.
Yeah.
Like I said, it would be a challenge for sure. And I think that I almost feel like that's one of those things where we talked about candidate questions earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know how much people are going to give up the keys to the kingdom before you get the job. But it would be interesting if those if you could start to discern some of those things before you ever started.
It's interesting. So pulling back the curtain, we're recording this the day after International Day of the Woman or whatever it's called. And yesterday on Twitter, there's a Twitter account, and I'll have to find it so we can put it in the show notes. But every company that tweeted out Happy International Day of the Woman, they quote tweeted it with where they were with pay equity. So where they met women were, and even if there were a few that they tweeted out that, hey, these people are paying their women more, or they're right equal. And then today you started seeing companies deleting tweets or reposting something to, clarify what they were meaning. So I'll find it and put it in the show notes, because I think one of the advantages we have now is it's a lot clearer where some of those pay gaps are. And so we can be more discerning even before you apply. I will find that for our notes. Paula Harvey asks, what's keeping you up at night in your career?
This has gotten a lot easier for me the longer I've done this, and particularly when I was in leadership. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I think right now I am struggling like everyone else, and like you are in your organization and every organization. It's finding the right people for the right jobs at the right time, and then figuring out how to retain them, knowing it's just different than it was 10 years ago. I don't lose sleep over it, because I know everybody. I keep telling myself everybody's in the same boat.
Right.
If it was just my organization, I'd be flipping out.
Different, yeah.
It would be different. I know it's not. And it's almost comical. I've seen our organization grow so much, and I've been there over 7 years now.
Wow.
We've doubled in size of teammate base, and our revenues are tremendously better than when I started. The growth is not going backwards.
Right.
If anything, infrastructure is so important in this country, and there's so many opportunities. It's dumbfounding the jobs we turn down, and the backlog of work we have in some places it's substantial. It's finding all these people to do the work. Some of it is just you can't will them into existence. I don't have a Harry Potter hat. I'd be wealthy if I did.
Right.
It's figuring out the talent puzzle, getting in front of them earlier, selling yourself as well as anyone else. That's what I think about a lot. Or I can't say it necessarily keeps me up like it did many years ago, because I kind of rest easy knowing it's not us. But it is a concern, and it is a concern I don't see fading anytime soon.
I can honestly say nothing. It's not keeping me up at night like it may have a few years ago. Talent pool, all of that. I am extremely fortunate right now to be in a position that is, not that it's not important, but it's not high demand. I'm not making 25, 30 phone calls a day. I'm not getting hundreds of emails a day that I have to answer. I get to sit back and think about these problems, and I get to spend my work time doing it. So I don't have to, it doesn't bother me at night, because I've already thought about it for 8 hours. And what are some new ways we can get out in front of candidates, and how can we entice people to come to our organization? And I realize I'm very fortunate to be able to do that right now. If my employers are listening, I love my job. And seriously, I do. It is one of the lowest stress jobs with a lot of high payoff. I'm putting out really cool initiatives that are getting more people educated to do entry-level medical work, and helping high school students find those opportunities to figure out where do they want to work if they want to go into the medical field, where in the medical field do they want to work? Because no longer are you just looking at, do you want to be a doctor, or do you want to be hey, John, you might want to be a doctor. Wendy, you might want to be a nurse, because of how, where we are. But being able to help people see the broader depth of what's available in healthcare. So I sleep easy at night when it comes to that.
Bob Thicken, better known as Professor Bob on Twitter, asks, do you have any interest or desire to become a COO, which I assume he means Chief Operations Officer?
Probably, yeah. No, that's easy, short question. I used to think I wanted to be one of those, have lots of letters behind my name, or, big title. I have zero desire to do that. I don't need that.
I would say you are a COO. You have a business,
I do.
A burgeoning business. Whether you like it or not, I'm the COO of the HR Social Hour podcast.
You are.
I've been operating this thing for 4 years, and this is about as far as I like to go.
True.
Do I want to go be a COO for somebody else? No.
No.
As I said earlier, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yep.
Going back to Paula's question, I want to be able to sleep at night. And I did it. I experienced it. It was fine. But running this little organization's plenty for me.
You keep us running forward, and I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile and add COO of Daily Scoops and see what happens.
Why not?
Well, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but yeah. I don't need more recruiters contacting me.
Or podcast bookers.
Right. Jeff Shapiro asks, what would you attempt to do if you could not fail?
Thought about this for a long time, so I really liked this question. Mm-hmm. One of the few regrets in my life musically is that I didn't spend more time learning bass, either electric or upright. If I had the ability to attempt and would not fail, it would be to play bass at a very high level, fill in the blank, either jazz or in a prog rock band like Rush or something. I don't need to sing. I can just play, but I'm just fascinated by tremendous bass players and their ability, the feel, the style, and you can watch, and they all play so different, just like guitar players, they all have unique tone and style and everything else. And I thought about this a lot, and originally I was going to say be a professional wrestler, but no, I think the bass, man, like just be cool. Like, just hang, and you're playing upright in a jazz club, and in the old days it would have been smoky and you just the boom, 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 boom. And then I'm out there playing Rush licks or whatever it is. Yeah.
I remember when, we'll sidetrack with the bass talk. We went a number of years ago, Rocky and I got to see the old 97s in Sioux Falls. Very small venue, so we were like real close, and just watching the guitarists, watching Rhett Miller play and the bass and all of them being right up there was just so, so cool. That was fun. As far as my answer, Jeff, that's a really good question. I don't know at this point in my life. I don't know. I don't have a lot of regrets of, wow, I wish I would have done such and such. I don't know. Because I'm kind of, going down the ice cream road. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, though.
Maybe you can answer it a year from now.
Yeah, a year from now, we'll see.
Like we're talking about how the long-term pandemic issues. We'll talk about what could you do to not fail.
Right, exactly. Because, I don't know, maybe it's just where I'm at in my life that I'm like, I don't... Maybe jump out of an airplane.
Okay.
I'll say that because I really have no desire to do it. When you're jumping out of an airplane, there's two ways in my mind that you fail. Either you don't jump or you crash when you land.
Right.
If I knew that I wouldn't chicken out at the top and I knew I would land softly, then maybe I'll say that. I'll say that.
We need to get you hooked up with KO. You need to go down there to Carolina and do it with her the next time she does it, because she's an old pro at this point.
She is.
I'm sure she could help you very much with that.
I would say I don't have a fear of heights. I have a fear of falling.
Fair enough. Tom Daniels asks, are you a fan of daylight savings time or not, and why?
All right. So I was having this conversation with my girls this morning. I don't care. I just want to stop changing. Now, this time is going to be okay because the dogs aren't going to wake me up at 4:30 in the morning for breakfast because they can't tell time. They know what time that it's time to eat based on how bright outside it is. That's how they know when it's time to eat. So in the fall, I get woken up in the middle of the night to get breakfast. I don't care. I know some people like it when it's light later. I live in a part of the world where come July, 10 o'clock at night, it's going to be light out during daylight savings time. But I really don't care.
I always have an easier time moving forward than moving back.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the biological clock. I'm up every day by 4:30 anyway, Eastern. Sunlight time doesn't matter. And of course, it's kind of funny to think how things have changed. And, there's states that don't change. And I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm not a detractor. It's just I will say I've always been fascinated from a payroll perspective. Like, the fact you have to automate, because when I worked in the power plants, you had people on 24/7 shifts and they're working those. And I always was just amazed that we knew those systems are calculated that way. That's how my simple mind works. It's more worried about that.
That is true. That is, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one too. Michael Vandervoort has a couple questions for us. What are 2 things that you think are normal but become really strange when you do them repeatedly? And why is it called beauty sleep, even though you wake up looking like a hot mess?
Well, I'm going to answer the second one first.
Okay.
Michael's never seen me wake up, so he doesn't know if I'm a hot mess or not.
That's true.
So I respectfully disagree with that. But I think the whole thing with beauty sleep is it's supposed to be your body's replenished, and hopefully if you're hydrated and, all these people that come on the show and drink lots of water, it ought to, I don't know.
Flush you out.
I'm not a cosmetologist or have any medical training, but I'm assuming it has something to do with that. Look, I don't think I think what we think is normal or what you think is normal may be really strange. And culturally, it's interesting. Yeah. I've watched a lot of YouTube in the last 2 years, particularly a lot of food stuff. Uh-huh. Like I watch stuff particularly about Southeast Asia, and you'll watch food, in South Korea, for example, and they put cheese on corn and like cheeses on everything, like in coffee and tea. Wait a minute, what? Cheese foam? Like to me, that's not normal. That's weird. But that's a delicacy. Huh. So I don't, 2 things. Michael, I'm sorry. I thought about it. I don't know.
I immediately went to saying any word. So if you say a word, a single word over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and you start thinking about it, that's weird. You start thinking about, just over. Okay. Well, and maybe over is a bad.
Red rum.
But if you start seriously, and maybe I get too deep into it sometimes where you're like, oh, well, why does over spell over? And then you start going down that rabbit track of who came up with the first way it was pronounced in English, which, 500 years ago, we couldn't talk to someone speaking English 500 years ago because they spoke a different language.
I would argue that we can't speak to people in certain parts of the country. I mean, again, dialect is so fascinating.
It's so fascinating. So words.
Words.
Just, and then if you don't think about it too much, but.
And the level of expectation we have for other people to come here to try to figure it out.
Right.
Particularly when many of them speak multiple languages and most of us don't. That's a pat answer for most Americans, but I believe it's true. I had my high school German and I remember enough to order a drink or something, but repeating words. What did you have a second one?
I don't know that I had a second one, but that was the first place that I went to because it was what's normal, but as you do it over and over again, seems really strange. What was words.
I'm going to have to ask Michael what his answer would be. I would be curious to see.
Yeah.
When I ask him anything sometime. Next time we see him, we'll have to ask. What is your position on beauty sleep?
Beauty sleep, same as yours, that you're rested and ready. Are you beautiful? No, in the first thing in the morning. It probably depends on how much hair you have on your head too. Let's be honest with that. When my children were little bald babies, it was easy. Now they got to get haircuts all the time, and one of them's got to do her hair every morning. And what is your routine in the morning, and how long does it take you? So if I get a good sleep, it doesn't take me as long to get ready. It's a lot of. I think it's one of those weird sayings that nobody, you really don't know where it came from. Like sleep like a baby. I don't want to sleep like a baby. At least not my babies.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Can I sleep like a dog? That makes more sense. My dogs sleep constantly. They're like cats.
We're going to wrap up the first part of this with Heather Kinsey asking, do you put your cream in the cup before or after you pour your coffee?
Before. And I've almost always done this, but there is an Alton Brown episode from Good Eats where he was talking about coffee. And that was one of his recommendations because then the cream or creamer or milk, whatever you're putting in there, or if you're putting sugar, whatever, it heats up and has a chance to melt as the coffee is being poured, and it mixes better than if you just take a spoon and mix it up after. So your cream and everything warms up with the coffee as opposed to coming in cold. Caveat on that is Jesse gave me a milk frother for Christmas. That is actually easier to pour in after. So I usually do a little bit, half goes in my cup before It's very complicated to make coffee in my house.
You're complicating this answer very much.
The frother is really cool because when I have whole or heavy cream in the house for making ice cream, the frother will turn it into whipped cream. Then we can get fresh whipped cream on our coffee as well.
I don't have a good answer for this because I haven't had a cup of coffee in, I don't remember the last time. It's been years. It legit has been years. If I have a Coke Zero, I unscrew the top and drink it. I usually have a bottle, not a can.
No cream in your Coke Zero?
No, but have you heard about that Starlight Coke that's out?
I'm curious about it.
Okay,
I'm scared, but I'm curious.
Yeah, okay. So I had a friend that tried it, and what he said was it tasted like mint cotton candy with raspberries or some kind of berry. And no, I don't know what none of us know what space tastes like. It's not feasible. I'm not sure why they thought that was space, but yeah, mint cotton candy. No, thank you.
No.
Good.
Yeah, but the only time I drink pop anymore is if somebody's got a cherry Coke fountain. That's one of my weaknesses. But otherwise, But ew.
That could be a whole conversation. So there you go with English: Coke, soda, pop.
Yeah. It's pop, folks. It's pop.
It's Coke. It's Coke. Everything's a Coke until I want a Coke. What kind? And you tell them. I'll tell a quick story. One of the funniest things I ever saw when I was a freshman in college, freshman week, Paul Reiser came and did stand-up.
Okay.
I thought he was great, but he's not necessarily what an 18-year-old audience in the early 1990s would necessarily be looking for. This was pre-Mad About You. But he's telling some really funny stories, and he starts talking about the whole Coke, pop, soda thing. And he tells the bit, he leaves it, and he's up there, and he's got a cup, and he's like, oh, man, I ran out of drink. And this girl in the audience yells, pop! And he goes, no, it was water. And then he's like, oh, my. And, of course, everybody just blows it. And he's like, oh, my God, I just called this in front of all her classmates. I am so sorry. Like, because he's just responding to a heckler.
Right.
No water. So I was immediately a Paul Reiser fan because that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
That's awesome.
So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. This episode of the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast is brought to you by Namely. The role of HR has changed drastically over the last couple of years, with remote work on the rise, constantly changing compliance requirements, and a historically competitive talent market. Making sure your team is supported in their work and community is more crucial than ever. That's why you need Namely, the all-in-one HR solution that offers everything you need to set you up for success along with dedicated support, giving you all the help you need to help your team. Namely helps you easily adapt to the ever-changing workplace and maintain a great employee experience, whether you have 50 or 1,000 employees, with onboarding, performance management, and intuitive benefits enrollment, all in one connected modern platform. Plus, Namely can streamline your payroll, time tracking, and vacation requests, so you can be everyone's favorite HR leader, no matter how your company grows. Companies are built on people. Don't let either fail. Get the support you need and learn more about making the switch to Namely by going to namely.com. Thanks again to Namely for sponsoring this episode of the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. Now, back to the show.
All right, we are back, and the second half is going to get a little crazy here. So, John, I will let you kick it off.
Kate Bischoff, a name you know, you love, and you trust. A dear friend. I do. And I will say Kate Bischoff is now, she has received an honorary status for Ask Us Anything that regardless of what she sends us going forward, they will all be answered.
Every time.
In some way. I don't know how, and it may not be exactly right, but in the past we've edited and No. She comes up with stuff, we're going to answer it. Some of you have been with us from the beginning with these things. You know how off the wall they may be, or that whole idea that Michael had about what two things that are normal. And no, some of these are just weird. We're going to go back and forth. The first one is probably the most benign of these, and that is, what was your favorite toy growing up?
It's a toss-up between Barbies and strawberry shortcake. My sister and I were both into strawberry shortcake. I was into Barbies. My best friend had Barbie, so I had the Barbie friends so that we could tell our Barbies apart. But we had all the strawberry shortcake dolls. We collected them. We had fun with them. My grandpa made us a dollhouse that was the size of the strawberry shortcake dolls.
Oh, neat.
Which I still have. And Jessie is actually hoping that this summer I will let her remodel it.
Oh, wow.
Which I probably will, because it's got linoleum from my original house. That's
awesome.
He did a great job with it. And the fact that my sister and I played with it and my daughters have played with it is wonderful. But I think my niece got the strawberry shortcake dolls. I don't know where they ended up, but that was mine. How about you?
I will say I too really liked strawberry shortcake. My sister had those, and I was always purple pie man because I thought he smelled great. But yeah, and those are coming back, by the way.
I know.
Boss Fight Studios, which is a boutique company, is bringing out like these high end. I'll send you some pictures. They're really cool. Boss Fight does really neat stuff. Most people know it's G.I. Joe. That was the end all be all for me. However, I will say there's another line that was when I was younger that I was into called Adventure People from Fisher Price,
yes.
And it's the second greatest toy line ever behind G.I. Joe. It was around for probably a decade. It was around for a long time. And it's still pretty easy to find stuff on eBay boxed from the late. It went from the mid 70s till the late 80s. Yeah,
I was trying to remember.
Something like 85, 84, 85. But yeah, I loved Adventure People. And what was great is I have all my Adventure People still. They were in the attic, and my kids played with them when they were 4 and 5. I had, it's like the safari set. It still had the dirt, it was the dirt from the 70s in the wheels.
Oh, wow.
And my kids just beat them up because they were built to just thrash. And man, Adventure People, so cool. So anyway, Adventure People and G.I. Joe, those were my two favorite things when I was a kid.
I love it. We're taking a definite turn here. Why do belly buttons collect lint?
I'm assuming it has something to do with the shape. Because if a belly button, I don't know, do Audis, do they collect lint? I don't even know.
I had one briefly when I was pregnant.
Okay.
I don't remember, though.
Do they have a choice? I don't know. I mean, it's got to go somewhere, just like the lost socks in the dryer. I know they go somewhere, too. The lint's got to end up somewhere, so why not your belly button?
Yeah, I would say this. It's at a prime spot to collect lint from your clothes, I guess. Dried skin cells, whatever it is, whatever that lint becomes. So I'm sure someone out there knows the answer, but I don't.
I'm assuming you probably don't know the answer to this one either, but why does poop stink?
I was just going to say biology. Well, and you know what? It is waste. It is all of the stuff that your body can't use. So, and food has a smell. So your poop's going to have, we're getting real here. Poop has an odor depending on what you ate when it comes. So, like if we have veggie fajitas, poop's a little different than if I have a hamburger.
I don't want this show to get too scatological. So I'm going to leave the biology piece to you. But I want to tell another story because I thought, as I was thinking through this list, you talk about crazy things that have happened. So 20 years ago, literally 20 years ago, I get a call from a manager about a temporary employee that they had. It was the son of a full-time employee. He was in college. And I get this call, just this person is going off, out of her mind. John, we got a problem. And I'm calling HR. Like, she's freaking out. Like, okay, slow down. What's going on? She's like, she just kept ranting about this kid. He did this and he did this. And she's telling the story and she's like hyperventilating. She's so angry. And I'm like, look, we got to calm down here. Like, what is going on? So she finally gets calmed down enough. She says, he came into my office and relieved himself. And I thought, oh my God, the kid went in the corner and took a leak on a plant or something. I'm sitting here trying to picture it going, holy cow, like this has made my week. So I'm like, wait a minute, wait. He relieved himself. Help me understand what's happening here. She says, he came into my office after lunch and he said, I have something for you. And she said, and then he,
oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
She said he lifted his leg and he broke wind. And then he rubbed his belly and he said, there's more where that came from.
Okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No, it was just, she was so impassioned and I'm literally thinking this kid took a leak and I'm thinking worst comes to worst. But he went in there and he lifted up his leg. These are These were all women in their 50s, if not 60s. And here's this 20-year-old kid. I got something for you. Rips a big one, rubs his belly, and goes, there's more where that came from. 2 ladies started chasing him with a can of Lysol. So here's the best part. They let him go.
Yeah.
We send him home. He calls the agency later and says, like, I don't understand why they let me go. And one of my coworkers is like, you went in and farted in this lady's office. What the hell were you thinking? So the manager calls me back later, and she says, Bobby, not his name, Bobby's called me twice, and I refused to talk to him. I said, you don't have to talk to Bobby anymore. Right. And she said, if he calls again, and I said, don't. And I said, here's the thing. Bobby's dad is going to go home tonight, and he's going to have to explain to his dad why he no longer has this great summer job with your group. And she said, I didn't think about that. So that's my greatest fart story at work, because that
is awesome.
The build-up, and the build-up of it, and he relieved himself. And John Thurman's definition of relieving himself and breaking wind are 2 very different things.
I was expecting do you remember the Office episode where someone pooped in Michael's office? That's where I was expecting this to go, quite honestly, because I was like, wow, he did it while she was in the room? Right. Oh my God!
I'm sure that has happened. Somebody who's probably listening to the show can probably tell us that story. But that was one of my favorites. That was one of my favorites. So moving on.
Wow. Okay. So after that, John, if you were a whole grain, what whole grain would you be?
Is quinoa a whole grain?
I think so.
Quinoa.
Why quinoa?
I don't know. It sounds exotic. I don't know. What would you say?
Well, my first thought was alfalfa, but I don't think alfalfa is an actual grain. And that's only because I love how alfalfa smells when it's mowed. So I'm going to go with wheat, because a wheat field, when it is ready to be harvested, is beautiful in the sunlight. It's just stunning. I don't know that you see that many places other than on the plains. But you get a nice little breeze and the sun, and it's golden, and it's just, that's what I would be.
All right, next up. Are you confident that the color you see as red is actually red?
Well, this actually gets into that whole conversation earlier about how did we come up with red as the color, as the name of the color. I'm going to say that I'm confident because most people I know describe that same color as red. They use the same word to describe the same color. So
even in other languages, it still equates.
It still equates. Rojo, rouge, all any of those. Everyone's saying it the same. Is saying it's the same color. We could all be wrong.
We could. I think you're right. And I've had friends that are colorblind over the years. And I can remember one time I had a friend that was colorblind that I was wearing a shirt or a tie rather that had oranges on it. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know, he called them limes because he couldn't see they were oranges.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, it's not red, but it was orange. But yes, I'm with you. I think that it is generally accepted that red is red is red. Mm-hmm. We're going to leave it to our friends over at HR Happy Hour with their Pantone scale, because there's, even within red, how many shades of red are there?
Right. Yeah. We could disagree on what shade it is and what is the, quote, official marketing, because, marketing has names for all official colors. All right. Can coins stand up on their edges?
I think over the years I have taken quarters or something and put them up on their side. So, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a Kate Bischoff question. So I went. Is that called the edge? Is it the point? I agree with you that, yes, you can stand a coin on its edge. Again, it is Kate.
The last question that Kate has is certainly the most philosophical of the bunch, I think. Mm-hmm. How does one know they are in love?
Wow. I personally do not believe love is a feeling. I believe love is a choice. And it is something that you choose to do with those in your family, by blood or not. And it's a decision that you make every single day. That are you going to continue to love these people? Because feelings fade. And so that's where, to me, that's the only way unconditional love is a real thing. is that it's a choice that I make, that there's nothing my children could do that would make me stop loving them, because I'm going to make that choice each and every day. I've already decided that. Same thing with my husband. I have to make that choice each and every day. Do I like them all the time? Maybe not. Do they do things to annoy us? Yeah. I truly believe love is a choice. Now, attraction is different. Infatuation is different. Those are feelings, because those are also fleeting.
Wow. I can't top that.
Some more fun questions, this time from Matt Stolick. So Matt is competing with Kate, I think, for some of the fun questions here. What is the fine line between stupid and clever?
I love this question. I don't have a great answer other than Conan O'Brien's been trying to keep that line for 35 years. He even said something to that effect in the last episode of his late night show. I tend to think that my humor skews from a lot of other people's, or like you find your people.
Right.
And Conan O'Brien, I can remember from the beginning watching Conan's show in college and thinking it was just hysterical. And a lot of people just didn't get it or didn't like it, and this just wasn't for them. And he just rode that.
He did.
He rode that, and it's fascinating how many of the people like him came out of these astute, high-level academic institutions and do silly stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much scatological, which that has its place. Our jokes can be funny. It is an incredibly fine line. It's being wise enough to know, almost like using the word over and over and over again.
Yeah.
If you repeat the bit too many times or what have you, it loses its punch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like when The Simpsons and Sideshow Bob, when he's stepping on the rakes, it gets right up to that line, but it doesn't cross it. And so that's probably a Conan thing, quite honestly, because he was a writer on The Simpsons for many years.
He was indeed. It's a challenge. And like I said, you think about a Dumb and Dumber, which most of that movie is just kind of, the jokes are just dumb, but then there are things that are a little more thoughtful, or particularly if you pick really obscure references. Dennis Miller may not like his politics, but he had some pretty funny and interesting jokes where he used really specific things that a lot of people wouldn't get. If you read a lot of old comic books, like particularly Marvel, they would reference people, and they would put Deadpool particularly. They'd reference like Spiro T. Agnew, and then it would have an asterisk, and it'd say, "Ask your kid, kids ask your parents," because it was just stuff you wouldn't understand. But it's again that clever and not being silly or stupid. But to me, Conan O'Brien epitomizes it, and his show, his TV show, his podcast, writing on The Simpsons, everything he's done, I've always been a fan of him.
Yeah.
And I will say, if you're not listening to that podcast, it's so interesting to listen to him in that format. And sometimes they get super silly, and sometimes it's a little more serious. He's doing that show now. Or do you listen to that show at all, or have you heard?
I haven't. It's on the list of, hey, when I have time, I need to listen to this now that I'm not driving anymore.
He does a sub-series now called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, and they interview people like you and me. It's just random people.
Interesting.
And it was funny, one of the wrestlers I'm a big fan of now, Danhausen was on as one of his guests. But he's had, last week or 2 weeks ago, he had a guy on that does sand sculptures professionally.
Wow.
And it's just, he'll have people from other countries and just random people, but they all have fun. Just like we all have our stories.
Right.
These people have stories, and they talk about themselves, and they talk about what they do, and then they always, at the end, ask him a question. He goes, "How can I help you?" Some of them ask really funny questions, some are really serious. But he always is engaged and focused, and he defines all that for me.
He defines that line, and I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of his, but just in what you've been saying, it's like, yeah, he is that. He's on that line. He defines it. I agree.
In a similar vein, or in that same track, what is the difference between ha-ha funny and funny ha-ha?
Ha-ha funny is, that's a really funny joke. You're laughing and, oh, that's so funny. Funny, ha-ha, is more like, yeah, you're not funny. Ha-ha. That's the way I read it.
I'm a big fan of The State, which was a sketch show on MTV in the 90s. It's my favorite sketch show of all time. And if you look at that cast, all but two of them are still in the business, and they were behind things like Reno 911 and So a lot of them are on Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Wet Hot American Summer. 3 of the guys, Michael, and David, 3 of them went off and did a show called Stella. They called it Dumb Comedy Dressed Up in a Suit. They would do these just bizarre bits in nightclubs in New York. And I say all this to say, if you've never seen the show Stella and you want to see funny haha and haha funny together, it is the weirdest. It's so off the wall. But a lot of people showed up on it. This is from like 2005.
Wow.
I found it on used DVD a while back for like $6, and I was so excited because I hadn't seen it in years. You can find The State. It's actually on Paramount now. Did you watch The State? It was on MTV.
I don't remember.
For 3 seasons. They did 3 seasons on MTV, and then they got picked up by CBS.
Oh.
And they did this Halloween special. It aired one time, and it did so badly they never did anything else for CBS. Several of them left, and they did a show called Viva Variety that was on Comedy Central. Then they did Reno 911, and then the other guys went off and did Stella, and then Michael and Michael have Issues, and they've just done all kinds of stuff over the years. And like I said, that cast, it's amazing how spread out in the comedy world they have become and still are. And I'm glad I get to talk about The State on this show.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Like that's funny how and I also think about Chris Farley because he always used to talk about Fatty Fall Down.
Yeah.
And that he was so much more than that. And his friends all knew that. But SNL would go for the cheap joke.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. And I've heard stories about him and that, they were really pushing him to do a serious movie before he passed. And he was much funnier than they allowed him to be. You want to talk about somebody that was scatological. He did some, they had some pretty wild times in the SNL.
I think they did, yeah.
Backstage from what I've heard. Well, when you're talking about a guy his size literally opening a window and dropping trow and deciding to do his business, Yeah. I'm sorry, I brought it around to that. I didn't mean to.
This is the poop show. All right, last question from Matt. What pseudonym do you or would you use when you check into a hotel?
I have never used one. I just don't think I'm important enough. But if I was going to, I would use Reinhold Messner.
Reinhold Messner.
Reinhold Messner.
Okay.
Who, in real life, he's an Italian mountain climber.
Okay.
Reinhold Messner in the 80s, his name was one of the most used names on fake IDs in North Carolina. Ben Folds 5, their last album together in the late 90s is called The Unauthorized Biography of Reinhold Messner.
Oh.
Reinhold Messner would be my choice. And nobody would get it.
No.
And that's okay.
No, they wouldn't.
It's from me. How about you?
I would go with Tina Fey because it might get me something.
Yeah,
I think I'm close enough visually if I darkened my hair that I might be able to get away with it.
I always thought the idea was you want to put a name that they don't find you, so if somebody calls the hotel, it's Tina Fey staying there.
Right. And that would kind of be the joke, is that obviously it's not Tina Fey because Tina Fey's not going to use her real name.
Have you read her book?
I have. I love her book.
Do you remember the story in there when she worked at the Y? She talked about the guy that had the bike injury.
Yes.
I knew him.
Really?
When I was at school at Northwestern, I didn't know. I mean, when I was at Northwestern, he would stop me on the street and tell me that story all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was there at the time I was. Yeah. I'd never met her, but I remember reading that book and I'm going, holy cow, I remember that guy. Like, he was really sad because he had this horrible accident and he never asked for money. He just wanted to tell you his story and wanted you to encourage you to wear a bike helmet.
Wow.
My weird connection to her.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Well, Mary Williams had a couple questions, but they are specific to us. So I'm going to ask yours first.
Okay.
Wendy, I've enjoyed following your journey of daily scoops, particularly the idea of the Girl Scout cookies and beer pairings. What surprises have you had along the way? Were you surprised that there was a particular combo that was a big success, and anything that works that you didn't think would work?
Honestly, I didn't think I never planned on being an entrepreneur, owning a business or going down this road. But there's been enough people encouraging me to do it. It just made sense. And one of the things I like about it is I can do it on my own terms. I have an entrepreneur mentor in Brookings. One of the things that she almost always tells me whenever we meet is, this is your timetable. you're not behind, you're not ahead, you're right where you're supposed to be. So that has kind of kept me going when I feel like, oh, I need to move a little bit faster or slower or whatever. I wish I had enough money to pay somebody to do all the business stuff for me so that I could just create ice cream, because that's what I enjoy doing. This last weekend, I made a mint ice cream. I used my mint chocolate chip ice cream recipe and just added Thin Mints instead. And it turned out really yummy. I mean, you can't go wrong with Girl Scout cookies and ice cream. Every one of them pairs, you can find a match. I think the biggest surprise for me was how much people have enjoyed when I did the testing for my boozy breakfast line, which is soaking the milk in breakfast cereals from our childhood. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is the runaway favorite on that. Fruit Loops is probably a second, but it's not as, the flavor isn't as much there. I'm going to try Fruity Pebbles and see if that works a little bit better to get that fruit. The biggest bust so far has been trying Lucky Charms as a boozy breakfast. I didn't realize that Lucky Charms doesn't have a lot of flavor.
It's not whole grain either, so
no, it's not whole grain. There's no,
like eating cardboard, and then there's no marshmallows.
I mean, it's just regular. I mean, it's like a cereal with a little bit of sugar on it, and the marshmallows have zero flavor, which I'm not a big fan of Lucky Charms. I don't like marshmallows in my cereal, I should say. So that one didn't turn out like I had hoped, because I thought it would be fun, but it wasn't. And it turned kind of a weird greenish color, so it really wasn't even appetizing to look at. That's been the fun part for me, is trying different things. And then, like when I did the Bananas Foster for our anniversary special or celebration, and like, okay, well, it's rum. So, let's add rum to the ice cream, and made a spiced rum vanilla ice cream and added some caramelized bananas to it. It's a lot of fun. And I mean, the other thing that keeps me going is no one else is doing this. Nobody, anywhere. I find specialty ice creams, but there's really no one using alcohol to flavor their ice cream. Yeah, I think it's been fun. I appreciate that, Mary. And if you're ever in the area, tell me your favorite flavor, and we'll come up with a batch for you.
You better be careful. We got a lot of listeners.
We do. But hey, if you're going to be in the area, we'll see what we can do. It doesn't take long to make a batch of ice cream. Just like for a couple of pints, doesn't take long at all. And Mary's question for John. John, you do a lot of music shares. Do you have a favorite song, artist, and genre?
No, and no. And it was fascinating to me when I first got into Twitter from the HR stuff. It was all about HR. And then when I started talking, particularly to Steve Brown, Kevin W. Grossman, several other people, we started talking about music. And I realized, there's a lot of other cool stuff that people have interest in that you can share. I grew up in a house where my dad has been a semi-professional singer since he was right out of high school, was a church choir director for many, many years. So I grew up around church music and more, liturgical / classical kind of stuff. I got into middle school and I joined the band and got very active in band, super active in band, super band nerd, and really got into instrumental music. I listened to the radio. It was 80s, and there's great 80s music, but it was just not my thing. I was really into that. And I got to college and I started listening to prog rock. I don't know, because I was a nerd and that just sounded like the cool thing to do. So I was listening to Rush and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and bands that were not of my time. And then in 1996, 95, 96, I discovered Ben Folds 5. Literally heard it on the radio. I heard Underground, blew my mind, and I was trying to write the lyrics down on a piece of paper. I went to the record store and I'm like, hey, there's this band. The guy plays piano. I was trying to read them. They had no idea what I was talking about. It was on the alt rock station in Nashville. I like a lot of stuff, just whatever hits me. Music is this beautiful thing, and it's so many things to so many people. While I'm detached from the standpoint, I haven't touched an instrument in years. I haven't done anything, in terms of creating music. I still have an incredible passion for stuff that's played well. Uh-huh. And regardless if it's classical music or a hip hop tune, like I listen to a lot of, I'm the white kid from the country that was playing De La Soul tapes in my 85 Mazda 626. And like when 3 is the Magic Number showed up in Spider-Man, I sang every word. Heidi looked at me like, how do you, and I'm like, that's from 3 Feet High and Rising. Like, that's one of the greatest albums ever done. So it's this weird thing. And, you know, and I will literally go, oh, okay, I want to go listen to the song. And I'll have these earworms that pop up that can be anything. It's a blessing and a curse in that regard. Like, if I'm really into somebody like Maynard Ferguson, rest his soul. I saw Maynard Ferguson 20 times before. Wow. I've seen Ben Folds 12 or 13 times now. I don't go to as much live music now or current music. It just doesn't interest me. And that's a shame because there is some cool stuff being made. I'm missing a show tonight. I would have gone to a show tonight, The Regrets, and I would have stuck out like a sore thumb. It's a all-girl band that are all in their mid to late 20s. Pop group, and it is. I am not their demographic. I would be at this point, but I love them. Like, they're really cool, and they've got a great message. And I just I dig them. And anyway, I'm recording this because I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah. And
again, I would have stuck out. But you know, I've learned so much doing Rush Saturday, Ben Folds Friday, now Sundays with Juliana Hatfield. Juliana Hatfield's so underrated. People just do not appreciate Juliana Hatfield or Blake Babies enough. It's been amazing to see just how interconnected we are. And I've picked up music. You know, I've learned about acts or gone and listened to albums in different ways. Or, hey, you talk to somebody and you figure out, like, they're a musician, they play an instrument now, or they were really active. How many band nerds have I met doing this show? Tuba players. Conference pal for life, Nicole Roberts, is a tuba player. Josh Rock's a tuba player. Like, that's crazy. Like, right. You know, 3 tuba players in HR before this. So anyhow, I would say I love it all. There are certain things I don't care much for, but I at least appreciate craft, and I'll give anything a shot. I don't really dig what my kids are listening to because to me it's just screaming. But hey, man, if it gets them and they're excited about it, I'm old enough now. I don't on anybody else's bliss. That's where I am. I just, you know, right? I used to be. I don't want to say I was a snob, but yeah, I had some level of expectation. But you know what? If you like it and it moves you, just like love. If you love a band or an act, I may think they're hot garbage, and that's okay.
It's
you know, that's what makes the world go round.
Exactly. I was just thinking, you know, the differences between us. I mean, if we all liked the same thing, how boring would that be?
Yes, but anybody that says Rush is bad is just like I read something lately where this guy he named Steely Dan, Rush, and another band like the 3 worst bands ever, and I'm like, dude, you've never seen Stone Cold Flat, which was the worst band I've ever seen. It was a British act that opened for Juliana Hatfield, and a hand down, the worst show I've ever been to. I wanted to ask you this because it's our show and we have time.
Yeah.
We've talked about most memorable performance. So what's the most memorable show you've ever been to? Or, musical or whatever. What's the most memorable thing for you?
Oh, so many choices, but I think I would go to, So I'm going to go back to my Colorado days, and a bunch of us went to, I think it was Copper Mountain, and there was a music festival. And we saw the Bare Naked Ladies, 10,000 Maniacs. Those are the 2 that are sticking out in my head. I know there was a bunch more. There's also a lot of alcohol. Pretty sure those are the 2 that I really wanted to see. It was a blast. We were, you know, hanging out on the mountainside, listening to some great music, and having a blast. Number 2 would be seeing Into the Woods with Maggie. A couple of years ago, it was here in Sioux Falls, and it was on Valentine's Day. We had front row seats. Still not quite sure how we got right front row. And between, right before Act 2 was about to start, the actors came out and were interacting with the audience and talking to us. And Maggie actually got to hold one of the horses. They had little hobby horses for the princes. Yeah. During one of the songs, one of the princes was like, "Hey, you hold this for me." So she's there in the front row holding the horse.
Great. That's great.
How about you?
I have 3. And again, this goes to show you stylistically how different they are. The first one, probably hands down the greatest show I've ever seen, Tower of Power in 1995 in Nashville, Tennessee. It was almost all recording executives at this show and a bunch of college kids. And if you've never seen Tower of Power, wow, it's funky and it's East Bay soul. Wendy, I cannot describe how amazing a live Tower of Power performance is. particularly that horn section where they missed one trumpet player cracked one note all night. It's like one person playing 5 instruments.
Wow.
It is hands down exciting, and everybody's dancing, and there's just, they don't let up. And for 90 minutes, I think part of it was because they've been around. I mean, now they've been around 55 years or whatever it is, 50 something. Even this time they've been around 35 or 40. They knew everybody in Nashville. So like I said, it's all these recording people coming to see him. So I think they stepped it up for that show. The second show was also in Nashville, VR 549, which is the greatest hillbilly band. VR 549, for those of you who don't know, it was the phone number to Junior Sample's car lot on Hee Haw. They opened the show, and then second was Billy Joe Shaver, God rest his soul. He is outlaw country to me, put on one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, and 3/4 of that audience was so drunk they started throwing beer bottles and cans and stuff, and it was like in Blues Brothers where they need to bring down the mesh. Jason and the Scorchers, which is a rockabilly band, was supposed to close the show. We left because we're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But VR 549 and Shaver back-to-back that night, unbelievable. But the third one is one of my many Ben Folds shows. For 2 shows in, I don't know, 08, 09, whenever it was, he did chat roulette, if you remember that platform. And you know, it was basically a randomizer where you would get on and you would talk to people.
Oh.
A lot of times, though, it was pretty graphic. And it would be literally guys just, you would see their crotches and that's all you see. But it would literally a roulette. So it was a roulette wheel you would spin through and you could talk to somebody and then, or if you didn't want to, you slide right and it would go to the next one. He had stolen this concept from a guy named Merton who was doing piano performances, and he would get on chat roulette and play, and then people would look at him and he'd make up songs. So Ben Folds does this twice. Or no, I'm sorry, he did it 3 times. The second time he did it was in Richmond. And I watched him for 10.5 minutes make up songs to people as the chat roulette went on. And there was one point where it spun the wheel, and all of a sudden, all you saw a dude's junk. That's all you saw. And then he ran to the next one. And he told everybody, he said, if you've got kids here, get them out because I cannot promise you what's going to happen.
Oh, my gosh.
But he gets to the end, and it's this dude drinking a bottle of Cuervo wearing a Viking helmet. And he starts calling him Jose, and he's talking about him. And the dude, it's this big, beefy dude, and he's shirtless, and he's got a Viking helmet on, and he's pounding tequila. And Ben Folds is making up this song, and he gets to the end, and he starts singing like the national anthem, and he goes, Jose, can you see? And he's banging, and the strobe lights start going, and the audience is 1,000 people in the audience are going crazy. And all of a sudden he hits the chat roulette button and it spins again. And this guy, all of a sudden his guy just sees this audience and this dude on a piano. He goes, we don't give a about you, and slam the computer down. And that was the end of it. It was the greatest live thing, like single thing I've ever seen. Heidi and I were just beside ourselves.
Wow.
It's out there. I'll find the link. He spliced them together and put them on YouTube.
That is awesome.
It was unbelievable. At one point, there's 3 guys in sunglasses. He just starts singing, I wear my sunglasses at night.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, it was those kind of experiences. I saw the Paper Airplane show, same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody wrote their favorite song on a piece of paper. The first time he did it was in Richmond. Lights come up. He walks out, and 300 paper airplanes go flying up to the Anyway.
That's crazy.
Wow. We've gone a long time.
We have.
But it's our show, and
we get to.
We want to thank everybody again,
yes.
And it is tradition.
Yes.
We got to do a giveaway.
All
so,
right.
Wendy, you ready to spin the wheel?
I am ready. Here we go.
And the winner is Matt Henry.
Ooh.
All the way at the beginning. Matt,
yes.
We may be talking about how did the pandemic long-term effect, but short-term is you win a prize, my friend. So congratulations. We will be in touch before the show releases. Thank you, everyone, again, for being part of this grand experiment. Wendy, thank you for letting me ramble about comedy and music.
This is great.
This was tremendous.
This was a lot of fun.
I like doing this every 3 or 4 months. I think it's our sweet spot.
For sure.
We don't have anybody to talk about otherwise. So, if somebody's made it this far and they're not connected with you, I can't imagine.
What's your problem?
Yeah. What's the best way for them to reach you out there?
The best way is my blog, mydailyjourney.com. And then, of course, Twitter, second and fourth Sunday of each month. You'll find me there, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and other times too. But that time specifically as part of our twice monthly Twitter chat. How about you, John?
Thanks to Namely for sponsoring this episode. Yes. I'm sure they probably wondered what they were getting into, but thank you, Namely, as always.
They're gone. They haven't listened.
Be sure to check out namely.com to learn more about their offerings. For me, johnthurman.com for all things John Thurman, for the show, HR Social Hour Podcast.podbean.com. Listen, rate, review, share, follow, whatever platform you're on. Just find that follow button, link, whatever it may be. You get that new episode each and every week. International listeners, we talked a lot about language tonight. We would love to talk about HR in your world as well. So reach out to us. Let's have those conversations and get them started. Wendy, again, this was tremendous fun. We will be back next week, though, with a guest.
Yes.
A little more closer to normal, but thank you all again for being part of this crazy experiment. We'll be less scatological, I promise. So for the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast, I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. And as always, be sure to connect,
give back, and
network.
Take care, everybody.
We'll see you soon.